Hey everybody, you join me atop a mooring stone, but whatever. I'm on the DR, and obviously this video is me talking about supermotos again. This is like a follow-up to my video recently that was called Why No Supermoto? That was basically asking the question, why don't you have a supermoto? Big thanks to everyone who left a comment on that video and sort of gave their input on this, because that's what's taught me what I think I now know, and has also sort of made me go, this is interesting, I wonder where this is going to go for supermotos in general. So it seemed like the main reasons that people don't want to get a supermoto bike is the practicality. Yes, it's true, they're not great two up, they're not great on the motorway and things like that, so they are limited in what they can do. For some, they're just not powerful and fast enough, which is also understandable. For some people, they're just too tall, which is actually something I didn't really think about too much, but yes, you're right, you do need to be fairly tall to ride supermotos. Some people said they're for the younger crowd. I'm a bit older now, and I can also understand that. So I can understand all these points. I can also understand and say people are like, I'd absolutely love one, but it just isn't going to be reliable enough as an everyday single bike for me, because I need to get to work and stuff, and I sometimes need to go on the motorways, and I can understand that side of it as well. I'm not sure that necessarily applies to things like the Husqvarna 701. You know, because they can actually kind of sit on the motorway, but you don't have the same wind protection, so it is a bit more fatiguing. I get all of these reasons why supermoto isn't more popular than it is now, even though it is awesome in the UK for most people. I think on average, most people would get on well with one most rides. But the thing is, you can't have a bike that does things most of the time. You need a bike that does things all the time, and all the things you need it to do. I mean, I own two bikes because of the fact that this won't go on a motorway very well. So I get people's reasons, it makes perfect sense. And then you also have to think, does anyone know how an indicator works? No. You also have to think, what options are there actually available now? If you want to buy a brand new supermoto in the UK, what can you get? Well, obviously you've got the KTM 690 SMC-R, you have the Husqvarna 701, and you have the GasGas 700, which you will have just noticed are indeed the same bike, of course, because KTM owns both Husqvarna and GasGas, which means that the bikes are the same thing. And it's a very strange strategy, I do have to say. It's like a Chinese strategy of having the same bike with very slightly small differences in cosmetics, because to my understanding there's no physical sort of part difference other than fairings. There's not better suspension between or anything like that. They share pretty much everything. That sort of tactic is normally only used by Chinese companies, or should we say different Chinese companies who buy the same base model bike from the factory and then rebrand it as their own. That's exactly how most Chinese motorcycles work, as I'm sure you're aware. A lot of when you're shopping on Amazon, you'll see the same toolkit with 7 different names on it. It's made by one factory and then everyone buys it from them, and then it's just resold with their brand on it. So the difference is it's actually made by them, but they're just having 3 of the same bike out there with small cosmetic differences, which is just a bit odd. There isn't really much left. The DLZ, this bike, is not sold in the UK anymore and hasn't been since 2008, and will never be sold here again because it's carburetted and you cannot have a non-injected bike anymore. Of course, people say the Ducati Hyper Motard. That is a bike that I want to ride more than pretty much any other one right now, because I want to see whether my thoughts on a 200 kilo Hypermoto are what they are, which is it's not going to feel much like a Supermoto. It's going to feel like a Hypermoto, somewhere between the two, but it's going to, for me, the lightness is going to be gone. The Hypermotard is 200 kilos wet. The 701 KTM variants, they're about 150 wet. The DR is about 130 something wet, I think, roughly. So it's got lightness, but then they've got not a huge amount of extra weight and quite a lot more power, so you'd think that shouldn't be a thing. Be much of a problem. My thing is, I don't really like, and I've ridden the KTM 690, the older one, and I've ridden a 701. Lamb Chops is very kind to let me ride his 701, and I'm not such a fan of, as I've said before, the seating position, sort of the way that the seat is so flat, and I'm not such a fan of the feeling of the steering. It feels very different. It feels less light and flicky to what I'm used to here. But if I haven't ridden one of these bikes for a huge amount of time, so maybe I'll get used to that and actually find that I prefer it. I don't know. I would love to try one out. As I say, if GasGas UK want to lend me one of the 700s, I would love to do a review series on it. KTM, you're welcome to get back in contact. Many years ago, the KTM rep got in contact with me and said they wanted to get me on an orange bike. Quote, that's what they said. And I was like, okay, cool, get a bike to me. And I didn't hear anything for about 2 years. And then they contacted me again and said, yeah, let's get you on one of our bikes. It'd be good to see you do some videos on them. I'm like, cool. Didn't hear from them again, and they don't work for the company anymore. So I don't have a contact at KTM anymore to be like, hey, can I get something? So I've not had the opportunity to try those bikes out long enough to be like, this is why everyone's going for this. I mean, obviously, a lot of people who are into supermotos strongly are all about the Huskies and the KTMs, and I'm not going to say they're wrong, because clearly they're more into it than I am. I love supermotos, but I don't make my entire life about it, or my channel about it, should we say. Of course, there's a few other supermotos, like CCM did some bikes and stuff, but from what I've looked at, CCM currently don't have a supermoto of any type. Similar, but not a supermoto. So the choice is really limited if you want a brand new one, and it's pretty damn limited if you want a second-hand one. And then the price of them is going up and up. The DRs are now selling for over £4,000. £4,500 is about an average price. I have seen them up for £6,500, just utterly ridiculous, never going to happen. Not at the moment anyway. But, £4,500 seems to be the going figure now, which is considerably more than it used to be. So the lack of these bikes is building the price, and in a way that's then going to damage things even more for people, because the options that are available are the 10 plus grand KTMs, roughly, or much more expensive old supermotos, which the price has gone up because you can't get anything else like them. Let's say for instance carb like this. But then again, I'm saying this like, what is the future of supermoto? Because what's going to happen to replace these current options? But maybe why there isn't many is because they're kind of like placeholders for when and I've done a video recently talking about the internal combustion engine ban, and that's a separate video, but if we just work on the basis we're on a timeline where they will actually ban internal combustion engine motorcycles in 2030, as they are currently proposing to, if we live in that supposed reality in the future, these things are all going to change anyway. Supermotos, electric supermotos, are the shiz. Absolutely. Electric dirt bikes make a lot of sense, because what's electric good at? Tons of torque, tons of grunt. They're not great at high speed continuous, but they're great at having power on, power off, and stuff like that, which is exactly what you want in an off-road bike. I've done videos on the Zero FX 11 kilowatt, which is the CBT legal version, which was utterly ridiculous because it was as quick as this thing, if not quicker. And I soon will have a full powered version of a very similar bike, so that is going to be coming up, and that's a future thing. It's, as I say, if the future is electric, then supermotos will be electric. That's not a bad thing. I mean, I love brap. I love the sound of a supermoto. It is a lot of it, but at the same time, as I've said in previous videos, if I'm going to be forced into no bike because I can't get one, or an electric, I'll go for the electric. I like them. They're good. They've got some benefits to them. But then again, supermotos, light, small bikes can only have small batteries, but you want them to be grunty, which means you're not going to get great range. Which means that they might not be really a viable future style of bike. So this is why I say I'm a little concerned for the future of supermotos. I mean, I'm sure the sport will still exist, but maybe seeing them on the street so much is not. Is there going to be enough draw that people will be willing to take an electric supermoto with virtually no range? Well, not virtually no range, but in comparison, not a huge amount. 100 miles or so, I think, is probably a good amount from some of them. But then are you going to use it much more than that? I don't normally ride this more than 100 miles in a day. It's not the sort of bike you do that. You can actually blasting around, and I did 2,000 miles in 2 weeks before now. So the future of supermoto could actually be quite bleak in the UK, at least, I think. There might not be many to see. However, the adverse of that is there is an opportunity there for a company to fill a gap, and I do think there is a big open gap in the market right now to replace what the DR has left behind. Something cheaper, not as fast, something that it's got the same sort of performance as this bike, although honestly, Suzuki, if you're going to make the DRZ 400 EFI. I would rather it be the DRZ 500 or 550 EFI with 6 gears. You know, just something a bit bigger, just a bit bigger. And if you do that, you know, you make it cheaper and you make it more usable on motorways, you're going to find a lot more people might pick that up. I'm going to end this one here because I don't want to get too long. I think you can see my point that thank you for all the feedback on why no supermotos. I kind of get it now, and it does lead into a what possible futures are we going to see for supermotos. If you did enjoy this video, smash the like out of the fuck button. Hit the subscribe button if I'm not 100k yet. If I have hit 100k, you don't need to subscribe. I don't care. I'm not going to get anything different. I just want to get the play button and then I'm good. Till the next one. Bye bye.